Talk to me, talk to me, talk to me. Your magical kiss take me just so far. Talk to me, talk to me, talk to me. Don't leave me like this, dangling from a star. Set me all aflame and it's so pleasing. It sure would be a shame if you were only teasing. So my love, before I go, turn the lights way down low and talk to me. Talk to me, talk to me. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Don McKeag Show. Ken Bukes is in the studio handling any calls you might like to call. It is a call-in show. The numbers are right on the screen now. We are on every Thursday from 6 to 7 o'clock. And it was a beautiful day until I just left Plymouth Gym, where I go before I come to the show most days, driving Kenny crazy because I come in just under the wire before we're on air. But it was a beautiful day until I watched the news when I came out of the shower and I saw, as they've been reporting, 4 Marines killed and the shooter killed in Chattanooga, Tennessee. A continuation of this lack of, I think, importance in terms of the minds of our government for our borders and for the safety of our troops. The dedicated young men and women, some middle-aged and older, who put their lives on hold. Some of them, of course, are career people, so that is their profession. That is their job and will be. But we are more concerned in today's politically correct America with giving an award in ESPY on television seen by millions, much more than the people who won't even watch the news and know what's going on, but they'll watch American Idol and the other softy Hollywood-type award ceremonies. We're more concerned with making sure we bleeding hearts. We give courageous awards now. We give a man who becomes a woman, we give him, her, whatever it is, we give those people an award for courage. We've got so bad now, our police officers have to think twice because of political correctness in defending themselves. And the liberal establishment right up there in the White House thinks that's just perfectly okay. And so do you people who continue to vote Democrat. As I've said for you that watch regularly, I was just about a lifetime Democrat, although I broke ranks several times. Well, sometimes I broke them. I was one of the Reagan Democrats, of which there were millions, because he represented more of the moderate Democrat that I was and might be again if the occasion ever warranted, although I don't see that ever happening, certainly not with Hillary Clinton. But as I do on my radio show, those that are new, I have a radio show, again, on Cape Cod, WXTK, every Saturday from 11 till 1. And it's on 95.1 WXTK FM, or you can get it on your computer. We also have this show available, not only 3 reruns, retakes, but also on YouTube. And what have we got now, Kenny, for total shows there?
Today's show is number 37.
Number 37. 37 weeks of absolute joy and intelligence. Well, what I read before the show, I have been now for almost a year, is something so very important to me and to tell people, whether they absorb it into their lifestyle or their thinking or pass it on to their kids and grandkids, that's up to them. But it's a quote 500 plus years ago by Martin Luther. First of all, I guarantee that a huge amount of this population doesn't know who Martin Luther was. They know who Martin Luther King is, they all do, and they should. But what they don't know is the man that Martin Luther King was named after, and why. Because he was a devout religious man, a Catholic priest in Germany, who saw the tremendous corruption in the church and took it on by himself, jeopardized everything. Certainly he was excommunicated, certainly, but he could have lost his life. Instead, he gave courage to other priests and others who saw the corruption and wanted to do something about it as well. Here is what the quote is that I constantly read, and I want you to hear it again. Cowardice asks the question, where am I here? Kenny, did I just lose my page? Anyway, cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it politic? Vanity asks the question, is it popular? But conscience asks the question, is it right? And there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular. He or she must take a position because their conscience tells them it is right. John F. Kennedy, 1961. A man does what he must in spite of personal consequences, in spite of obstacles and dangers and pressures, and that is the basis of all human morality. We have a country, I've lived long enough now to see it, so has Ken, so has much of my radio audience, and hopefully much of this audience. Hopefully some young listen, because they're the ones that really need to hear from people who've lived this life and seen the changes that aren't good. They don't bode well for the future. We now have a country that's rewriting history while at the same time passing or voting for treaties such as the Iran dangerous situation that might eliminate our history altogether down the road. Did you ever think of that? We're more worried about a battle flag. That's another thing that's disingenuous about this rebel flag. That was not the Confederacy flag. It was a battle flag, of which there were several different ones. One thing that was very interesting, again, you won't see it in the mainstream media. Did you know that Phil Sherman, William Tecumseh Sherman, I believe, or Phil Sheridan, I guess, pardon me, Phil Sheridan and Ulysses S. Grant owned slaves. Did you know that, Kenny?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Did they get rid of the slaves?
Not until they had to.
Yeah, after the war was over, they got rid of their slaves.
Correct.
Did you ever see that, Scott? Robert E. Lee got rid of his slaves before the war, or during the war. A great man did what he thought was right, and they're vilifying him, and just like Thomas Jefferson. This political correctness is out of control so badly, and the thing is, they don't care about the results. What we are experiencing right now, ladies and gentlemen, is the direct results, cause and effect of the National Organization of Women, of the ACLU lawyers, also the NAACP. All of these are out of control. Remember the expression, The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Many start out with good intentions, and they win the public over. But then the wrong leaders get in there who have an axe to grind and want to get powerful. And that's what's happened, I believe, in this country. And I think it bears. Cicero, 56 BC. Imagine, 2,070-odd years ago. The evil implanted in man by nature spread so imperceptibly when the habit of wrongdoing goes unchecked that he himself can set no limit to his shamelessness. Let me read that again. This was a great philosopher, poet, whatever, of Rome, in Rome's heyday, contemporary of Caesar, Julius Caesar. The evil implanted in man by nature, i.e., 7 deadly sins that I also keep reminding you about. The evil implanted in man by nature spread so imperceptibly when the habit of wrongdoing is unchecked that he himself can set no limit to his or her shamelessness. And this is what we have. The bleeding heart do-gooders, the liberals. This is why it's war for me now. And if I offend, so be it. I'm offended by what's being forced onto my children, grandchildren, your grandchildren. The value systems that we see now don't exist in my brain. And I am a tolerant person. I am not a racist, but behavior is behavior, and good is good. And we don't have an awful lot of that. We have good people, but I'll tell you, they're not the ones setting the standards anymore. And it goes back to that other quote, that power corrupts. And absolute power corrupts absolutely. Now let's look at today. Let's look at what you see on television. We have a black president. We had a black governor. We have black officials throughout this country at all levels. We have a black attorney general. We have a lot of black people on the television doing news, in movies. Is the country less divided, less racial? I don't think so. And why is that? Because it's not tempered, I believe, with a goodness. There's too much of people with an axe to grind achieving a position of power, and then up rears that bitterness. I can understand it, but I'm not going to tolerate it like we have with political correct networks and everyone else today. It is shameless, and again, why? Because it's gone into people so badly, they now fall for it. And of course, our young people now are living that way. And it's a shame. It's really a shame. I wanted to read this for you, Kenny. This is us old fogies. The typical U.S. household headed by a person age 65 or older has a net worth 47 times greater than a household headed by someone under 35. Think about that. Now, you hope that came from hard work, 30 years of it, saving, right?
That's right.
Buying a house, the appreciation of your property. This is according to an analysis of census data that was released last week. They like to refer to us as senior citizens, old fogies, geezers, and in some cases, dinosaurs. Some of us are baby boomers getting ready to retire. Others have been retired for some time. We walk a little slower these days, and our eyes and hearing are not what they once were. We worked hard, raised our children, worshiped our God, and grown old together. Yes, we are the ones some referred to as being over the hill, and that's probably true. I don't think that's true. Do you, Ken?
I don't recall going
What hill
over.
are they talking about? I'm not over the
any
hill.
hills.
I refuse to go over the hill.
It's all flat coming here.
But anyway, before you write us off completely, there's a few things that need to be taken into consideration, which is why I'm reading this. In school, we studied English, history, math, and science, which enabled us to lead America into the technological age. Most of us remember what outhouses were. Well, that's a little, I do, my grandparents had one.
I remember
but it was
those.
a camp. Did you?
At camp, right.
At a camp, yeah.
In Walpole.
Not at home.
Yeah.
In Walpole, Mass?
They
Were
had
you
a
in
camp
prison there, too?
Well, there wasn't a prison there then. No.
Anyway, many of us with first-hand experience, I do remember my grandparents. I was a little kid. We remember the days of telephone party lines. I don't remember that either. 25-cent gas, I remember that. Milk and ice being delivered to our homes. Not ice. Do you remember? There wasn't ice delivered to the houses. The camps did, right?
We had an ice box. We were so poor in my house.
Did you?
Yes, we had an ice box. The guy came and dropped
No,
off ice.
I don't have. We never had ice delivered. And milk. I think my mother, they bought the milk. But for those of you who don't know what an ice box is, today they are electric and referred to as refrigerated. A few even remember when cars were started with a crank. Well, these are people way beyond me. We were considered old-fashioned and outdated by many, but there are a few things you need to remember before completely writing off this generation. We won World War II, fought in Korea and Vietnam. We can quote the Pledge of Allegiance and know where to place our hand when doing so.
Correct.
We wore the uniform of our country with pride and lost many friends on the battlefield. We didn't fight for the socialist states of America. We fought for the land of the free and the home of the brave. We wore different uniforms but carried the same flag. We know the words to the Star-Spangled Banner, America and America the Beautiful, by heart. How many kids today do you think know any of those songs? I can sing them right now.
It's not the majority, Tom. It's not
Majority,
the
I
majority
don't
at all.
And you may even see some tears running down our cheeks as we sing it. We've lived what many of you have only read in history books, and we feel no obligation to apologize to anyone for America. Is that today? We got to apologize. We have people at the highest levels apologizing for us. Incredible. And getting away with it and having huge support. Yes, we're old and slow these days, but rest assured we have at least one good fight left in us. We have loved this country, fought for it, and died for it. And now we're going to save it. It's our country, and nobody is going to take it away from us. We took oaths to defend America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that is an oath we plan to keep. There are those who want to destroy this land we love, but like our founders, there's no way we are going to remain silent. I hope not. It was mostly the young people of this nation who elected Obama and the Democratic Congress. You fell for the hope and change, which in reality was nothing but hype and lies. You youngsters have tasted socialism and seen evil face to face and have found you don't like it at all. You make a lot of noise, but most are all too interested in their careers or climbing the social ladder to be involved in such mundane things as patriotism and voting. Many of those who fell for the great lie in 2008 are now having buyer's remorse. With all the education we gave you, you didn't have sense enough to see through the lies and instead drank the Kool-Aid. Now you're paying the price and complaining about it. No jobs, lost mortgages, higher taxes, and less freedoms. This is what you voted for, and this is what you got. Well, don't worry, youngsters. The gray-head brigade is here, and in 2016, we're going to take back our nation. I hope so. This is just a letter that I received, and it is just enough to call attention, not to the young ones, Kenny. The reason I read this is how many of the gray-head are really going to change things? They're not. They haven't so far.
I think we're beyond it.
I do too.
I think we're
mean,
hoping that we're coasting, but actually there's no snow to coast on.
Well, I don't know what.
It's awful. It's awful.
The thing that I, in reading a couple of the my things, but especially what I said about Martin Luther, it reminds me of Donald Trump. And there are so many still laughing at the man, thinking he's a lunatic, and yet their conscience, anybody whose conscience is knowing how important the truth is. I've heard young ones. I've heard a lot of women now. They said, I didn't like the guy, and I don't, but I do now. Have you heard a lot of that?
I've been hearing that, and his numbers are really good if Hillary is the other candidate.
Well, I don't think he can win because it's, again, and I don't think any conservative person, anybody that tells the truth today, there's just too many on the take. There's too many on the take. And the television and the reporters are so busy handling important things. Imagine a congresswoman. You probably saw this. I can't remember. I thought it was California, but I don't think it was. She's introduced a bill to remove the words husband and wife from the marriage ceremony.
Haven't heard it.
You haven't heard that?
I haven't heard it.
Now, what I just learned today is the liberal lunatic who keeps getting elected because it's the California, remember the largest house of insanity in this whole country is California. You talk about Greece getting bailed out. Nobody talks about we've bailed California out at least twice.
Yeah, it has
very
been. Quietly.
Right. Bush was one. I mean, it doesn't matter about party. Well, anyway, here we have 4 Marines killed. We have an ongoing pressure. We've insulted Benjamin Netanyahu, who represents the only place in the Middle East that we can count on, we can have bases at, that we know think like we do. It's a democracy. And we have a president insulted him, and we have a Jewish community that let him get away with it and still does. Still.
Yes.
And here we are worrying about the word husband and wife. And I heard, what's her name there, the conservative talk, not Ann Coulter, but the other gal, but say, the minute a liberal group gets their teeth into something, no matter what you give them, they're never happy. I've said that about the gay population. I don't care. They weren't happy with the civil union. They aren't happy now. Now, of course, you notice it, folks? I don't care whether you like it or not. Look what happened to abortion when the abortion situation was okayed. You think abortion stayed the same? Those having abortions? Quadrupled. Do you think that was all women who were in danger of dying? Do you think it was all rapes and incest? It's never enough for this group of people today who are in control of your kids and your grandkids' future moral standards. And you can call me anything you want. I'll gladly take it. But when your priorities are a battle flag that was flown by Americans. Remember, the Civil War was all Americans, South and North. Everyone that got killed and maimed was an American. And I've said this before, but it's okay to buy German products and Japanese products. Doesn't apply, I guess. But rewrite our history. Doesn't matter that the rebel flag was raised and congratulated on being raised by Bill Clinton, a Democrat, in Arkansas when he was governor. That's been conveniently forgotten about, or if it's mentioned, South Carolina, which is now a Republican woman governor, who's responsible for taking down this, again, disgrace. No, they have no courage. I don't know, again, I've said it to people, men have really lost it. They've lost the testosterone. They've become wimps, too many of them, period. I've seen it in my last 20 years, and they've just said, the hell with it, I'll let them go. They're kinder. What a load of baloney. Anyway, she's a Republican. And guess how that was reported on the news when that flag came down? I heard it in 2 different mainstream media television stations. A Republican-controlled legislature of South Carolina, along with Governor, whatever her name is, was forced by some of their own in the Senate and in Congress and state to go along with the Democratic push to make sure that flag was removed. Again, shamelessness, as Cicero said. The evil goes into these people that have a poison pen, and it gets worse. They have no shame. History doesn't tell you that. The man's name was Hollins, Senator Hollins. He became a senator after he was governor. He's the one in South Carolina that raised the flag in the first place with huge support. Now, where are the men in the South that say, hey, wait a minute, this is a battle flag. This represents our state, not slavery. No courage. They don't have it. And it's all because these politicians are gutless wonders, both parties. That's why these Republicans are so condemning Donald Trump for what he said. Let's look, ladies and gentlemen, this is just honest dialogue. Honest. This is about principles, not personalities. That's another thing that political correctness, the young people don't know. Just look at the principles we're talking about. Don't look if it's a male, a female, a black, or gay, or whatever. Look at the principles. Do they hold up under examination, or don't they? Every single minority position now has been abused. Every single liberal program right now is wasteful, is enabling, is creating what it's supposed to fight against. We have generations, multiple generations of people in the inner cities who have never worked. Never. Who've had their children paid for, had their insurance paid for, their cell phones paid for. Billions and billions of dollars. But that's not what concerns me. It's what is created emotionally in the minds of these poor people who've never, ever earned their way in this life. You wonder why there's so many drugs and so much alcohol in these inner cities? And all we get are these wealthy and these other feel-gooders. Oh, we've got to help. Don't talk to me about help. Churches used to do it, but what of this culture today? They minimize churches. They demonize Christianity. We're unfair, just like America. The greatest country there's ever been on the face of the earth. Still is. Under heavy siege by its own, but it's still the finest country with the finest people in it. All political parties, all religions, all races. We still have the finest group of people, the good ones. The trouble is they've lost a lot of the courage to take on some of their own by political correctness. Kenny, you and I have seen the difference. I've seen it. We've seen how people talk to one another. We've seen the foul language. We've seen women now talk and act in a way that, my word, they'd have been slapped silly by their mother. Slapped silly. Of course, today the mother would had some nitwit liberal drop a dime and turn her into the police. The 4-letter words, exposing themselves. Doesn't matter. That's live and let live, I guess. But anyway, enough of that. So, Kenny, we've got other things. Did you have something? One of the things that I did on the radio show, oh, pardon me, I started to ask you something, didn't let you answer it. Excuse me.
What I wanted to ask you was,
yes,
Of the shooting today in Tennessee, how much of the information did you hear in the travel from the gym to the studio? Did you hear the name of the individual?
No.
It's Mohammed.
Oh, surprise, surprise.
Number 2, Howie Carr was on the radio. I was listening to it on the way to the studio,
Speak up a little louder. I don't know if it's okay.
and Howie said that there were signs inside the recruiting facility that stated this is a gun-free zone, and that's where he killed the 4 Marines.
Yep.
They didn't have a weapon to defend themselves.
Yep.
The last part of it is
The Marines weren't allowed to carry
they
weapons.
weren't allowed to carry
Isn't this
weapons.
Aren't you happy with that, liberal Democrats? I hope that makes you happy because, of course, on top of that, you're doing such a great job. Bruce Jenner got an award for courage for changing his sex to a woman. I hope you love it.
And my last point is about the Bruce Jenner thing.
Yep.
There's a story circulating
disgrace.
in the
A
press.
disgrace.
There's a story in the press that the only reason that person got that courage award was blackmail for a telecast of the interview with Diane Sawyer.
Yeah.
It was payback. And a lot of people I know in the industry are very upset with ESPN for doing that.
Why are they surprised?
That's all I got to add at this point, unless you got something else.
Oh,
for
wait a
me.
minute. Cicero died at age 62, born in 106 BC, died in 43 BC. Now, I don't know if today's students without a calculator can
They don't
figure out.
they don't know
okay?
how the calculator
What you
works.
do is you take 2015
Correct.
and you add 106 for when he was born.
Correct.
So there's 2,121 years. He says, the evil implanted in man by nature, it's part of our nature, ladies and gentlemen, spreads so imperceptibly. Now we're talking about the press.
That's a big word.
When the habit of wrongdoing is unchecked, that he himself can set no limit to his shamelessness. And by the way, the title that a person like this has doesn't matter. They can be a king, they can be a president, they can be a priest, they can be a minister, they can be a CEO.
Right.
The evil that nature has put in them spreads imperceptibly, so there's no limit to their shamelessness. There's an example. Bribing something of that nature. But again, it happens every day.
I'm not surprised by it,
No.
but I didn't know whether you had heard that story.
No, I didn't hear that part of it. I just, again, I didn't know this had happened. But now, is there going to be outrage over the fact those poor Marines couldn't defend themselves?
Well, you know
And how did this guy get in there with a gun?
He supposedly shot through the window and then
Yeah.
gained access to get inside.
I'd love to know, too, if how many people in this country think it was okay in Massachusetts, loaded with Democrats, controlled by liberal Democrats. They vote for any of them, whether they're in jail, out of jail. And I was a Democrat, but I was a JFK Democrat, and things were different, a lot different then. They're not the Democratic Party I knew. But anyway, any of the liberal reporters and all the feel-gooders, anybody remember if the Zarnicki or whatever their names are that were responsible for our Boston Marathon massacre? Were they
Zanos.
born in this country? Huh? What was their religion, Ken? Huh? How about 9/11, that jet that, took off from Boston?
Two of the jets.
Two of the jets. What nationality were they? I guess, this is me being evil, right? I just don't have any heart.
There were the majority of the terrorists flying those airplanes.
Oh, boy.
There were 19 of them that were from Syria.
But let's open the borders up now. Howie Cass has told it, but Rush Limbaugh did. They now know from government agencies just under 500,000 illegals coming through Mexico. Just under 500,000 are convicted felons for just what Trump has been talking about. Now, I guess you just continue. Every time they do a show about all the people living on the border, and McCain's just as bad. McCain should have been screaming about this. Politically correct in his own state of Arizona. He's not representing those people that own property along those borders.
No, he's not. No, he's
Unless, of course, they're farmers. But we already know in California, less than 2% of the illegals are actually workers. So what are they doing? They're living in the inner cities. They're living, illegally and getting a check.
a big one, too.
But it's insane.
I have to pay for my health insurance.
I just cannot. Again, how long is this going to go on before someone does something about it? Before a Republican candidate takes up the mantle that Trump has at least stirred up, that people are fed up, men and women, some of them Democrats, want somebody telling the truth. What is it going to take? It just is so amazing. We have a little... I hate to get into such negative stuff, but my God, it's war, ladies and gentlemen, isn't it? I mean, I'm not going to be around if you're over 65 and I'm in the 70s. But what about you say you love your kids and your grandkids and you're watching them and they're going into schools, they're going into colleges at $40,000 and $50,000 a year that the parents, your kids have sacrificed for, and they're getting a professor that stands up in socialism and they badmouth America to the kids. We do. And who can we say is calling? Hello?
Hi, John. My name is Jeff.
Hi.
Hi. I understand your points here, but I just wanted to ask you, what was the nationality of the people who ordered the drone strikes that killed all those children in Yemen and Pakistan?
You mean the American? You mean the Americans?
Oh, that was their nationality?
Yeah, and who gave the permission to do that, by the way, Jeff?
You mean the American president?
Yes, the American president.
So it seems that we're just as bad, doesn't it, Don?
Well, now, wait a minute. Now, I understand your point, and I don't know enough about the entire episode, and I'm very nervous about drones, but once again, are you suggesting that the balance of ills, that we are equally guilty as these Muslims are that we're talking and referring to now? Is that what you're suggesting, Jess?
Well, I'm not sure, Don, that I can give you...
We're not perfect. I've said that. We're not perfect.
Yeah, I don't know if I can give you a direct tally, but, I mean, if we look...
Oh, I don't mean the numbers, but I'm just saying, just in general terms.
Right. Well, I mean, let's look at American foreign policy in the 70s and 80s. We supported a bunch of fascist dictators in South America that are responsible for the deaths of thousands of innocent civilians. Mm-hmm. We continued to do this because, of course, these fascist dictators were opposed to communism. We didn't care about all of the terrible things that they were doing because they were aligned with our interests, but it was okay since they were opposed to communism. I mean, that's thousands and thousands of lives that, are totally gone. People were tortured, people were murdered, people were killed, all because, again, the people who were responsible for these tortures and murders and so forth were aligned with our interests. If you look at the current policy, the drone policy now, I mean, we claim to be going after militants, but unfortunately, the majority of the time, it's innocent people being killed. I mean, there was a drone strike in Yemen that killed 30 civilians a couple of weeks ago. But we continue to say that it's okay because there's the chance that, there might be somebody that was killed in it that was a militant. But again, when you look at the death tolls, I mean, these are kids dying. These are innocent civilians. So I'm not saying that we can say that the balance of ills is somehow equal, but I think we have to take responsibility for some of the terrible, horrible things that American foreign policy has brought to this world.
Well, first of all, I can't thank you enough for your call, okay? I really do, and I encourage more to do this, and I also follow your opinion. The only thing I ask is this, we obviously saw the devastation in the Boston Marathon, correct?
Yes.
Now, are we, in this country, okay, that was a response from, obviously, a form of anti-American Muslim, not the entire religion, but it was a response uncalled for. Now, the only thing, I totally understand where you're coming from in terms of our participation over centuries, but how many times are we doing it in defense of the country? Now, Yemen. What if we don't have a presence at all in Yemen, Jeff? Do you think that the Yemens will be safer and better off?
Well, it seems to me that our stake in Yemen is kind of two-faced, unfortunately, and quite duplicitous, because the Houthis in Yemen that were allowing Saudi Arabia to attack, we actually support the Houthis because they help fight ISIS. So I'm not sure whether we can say that our intentions in Yemen are so benign, unfortunately. It's a shame that we support both sides, but we do because, again, it's really...
Well, that's the State Department, and that's always been something that, I mean, there's nothing to me, I understand, but I don't, because we support financially billions and billions of hard-earned American dollars to support countries who would blow us up, that hate us, and yet we continue to support them financially. Now, you're talking militarily, and rightly so. We're talking about innocent children, which appalls me. But again, I say, like this thing in Chattanooga, and these people that are coming into a country, we may be torn apart politically, and we argue, but when you go into the Middle East and you go to these other countries, don't you admit that there is constant killing of their own by each other, and we are trying to take a side, I would like to think, and I understand that there are selfish and hypocritical reasons sometimes for political gain, but don't you, I mean, there's a militaristic attitude and mood in those countries that I believe our participation is to try to better the country for those who seem to be, the most peace-loving or the fairest to their own people.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, Don, a lot of those countries have been radicalized over several decades of American involvement that has constantly caused chaos in the nation. I mean, if you look at Afghanistan in the 80s, when the Russians invaded Afghanistan...
We should have learned from them, and we didn't, of course. Right.
In 79, of course, we supported the Mujahideen, which later became sects of the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. We gave them weapons and training so that they could fight the Russians because, of course, we were opposed to them because of communism. But I think when you look at that part of American history, unfortunately, what's occurred in Afghanistan, a lot of the chaos and a lot of the radicalization comes from the fact that we were arming and training many of the radicals, again, to support our own interests.
All right, now, can I just interrupt? I repeat, thank you, because you're obviously well-informed. You're obviously dedicated to your positions, and they're legitimate. But let me ask you this now, Jet. Did you go to college here in this country? Or?
I am in in college now, sir. I
Okay.
attend Emerson College in Boston.
Now, how do you feel about seats of education, colleges, which it isn't all, but it's become, I think, too frequent, where the United States flaws become part of the psyche, I guess we would say, of American students, who then develop, through their educator, a kind of a bent toward looking at America, their own country, that gives them so many things that these other countries don't have, but it gives them a negative attitude toward their own country. That
Yes.
bothers me very much. This discussion is fine, but it isn't fine if the people who take your position, in my mind, take your position, become people who now actively participate against the United States of America. Because do you agree that we are still the finest? That statement I made, we're still the finest country the world's ever seen, and we still are populated by people like you, I'm sure, and I don't know, who are fine people who do the right thing, who care about the future of this country. Is that?
Well, I do love this country, and I love its people.
Right.
And I believe very much that we can be great. I just think that, unfortunately, our government hasn't always been my favorite. And I think that, to answer your primary question about the sort of anti-American attitude, I don't think that it should radicalize our own people against this nation, but I do think that taking responsibility for the things that we've done is important, and I encourage, an educational system that does not just focus on all of the wonderful things that this nation has done, but also allows us to take responsibility for the bad things. Because, of course, at the end of the day, it is still a government that we support, monetarily, that we support by voting, and we should understand that, they don't always make the right decisions. So I think if we come to be more educated about the terrible things that our government has done, as Thomas Jefferson said, the tree of liberty has to be nourished by the blood of patriots, sometimes.
Sometimes, that's right.
And I think that
he also said that he believed the best government is the least government, and that's, to me, held true, especially now. We've got too much government, too much involvement domestically, and part of it is this rewriting of our history. See, what I've just been talking about, and I don't know what prompted you to call, but I'm tickled you did, and that is this idea of rewriting history in the minds of, in my disagreement is with the liberal establishment, who looks, it's like an I gotcha thing. They want to point out how bad we were in the Civil War, how bad we were as people, without taking any consideration for the times, for the judgments that are made against farmers and against slavery is bad no matter how you look at it. However, to all of a sudden now vilify people who had slaves, and again, selectively, they're going after Thomas Jefferson now. You watch what they do. In terms, here's one of the brightest men that's ever lived. John Kennedy called him the brightest man, ever, and more responsible for the development of our government as it is today. And yet now they've got the bit between their teeth, these rewriters of history, and I suggest it's far from over. They are going to continue to tear down basically good people with human flaws.
Right. Yeah, well, I think that's reactionary, and I think people need to feel that they have some kind of power over something, because I think people do feel very powerless today.
Well, I do. I agree with. I feel it. That's why I'm doing this show, because at least I'm going to verbalize, and hopefully I get more response from people like you who disagree and point out the other side, because that's what I want. I want the truth. I don't want to be right if I'm not right. I don't want to win an argument just to win an argument. If I want people calling me, telling me where I'm wrong specifically, and I will yield to that. We don't have enough of that in the dialogue today, Jess. You watch the television, I mean, they can have facts right in front of their face, and they'll either hop over it or minimize it if it's against their agenda. And that is really harmful.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely agree, Don. You know, we might not agree, and we might be polar opposites, politically speaking,
right.
But I think this discussion was fruitful, and I thank you.
Oh, I thank you so much. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful summer, too. I hope you'll listen to the show another time.
Yeah, I'll keep watching it. Thanks,
okay,
Don.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Kenny. The number's still up there. Maybe Jess has started a few thoughts. I also want to read this Alan Pitt, who was an English philosopher. The man who follows the crowd will usually get no further than the crowd. The man who walks alone is likely to find himself in places no one has ever been before. By the way, let's say man and woman, and that's not political correctness. That's another thing. The reason it's man meaning mankind. So let's get that straight. We're not saying men are the only ones considered here. Creativity in living is not without its attendant difficulties, for peculiarity breeds contempt. And the unfortunate thing about being ahead of your time is that when people finally realize you were right, they'll say it was obvious all along. You have two choices in life. You can dissolve into the mainstream, or you can be distinct. To be distinct, you must be different. To be different, you must strive to be what no one else but you can be. And Jess, you're doing that. You're striving to be what no one else can be, and that is have the courage to make a call, have the courage to look at the underbelly of the United States. No one of intelligence on either side should be able to not look at and revisit areas where we certainly could have done better. But to go on hands and knees to foreign countries who have been and continue to be treating their own people in such a way that America has never treated is, I believe, a very dangerous road to take, because it encourages others who have been, again, brainwashed to a degree about the wrongs of this country to then go to other foreign countries and perhaps work against us. It encourages people to become spies. And this is how we've had people take, selective, protected espionage information that they should have been shot. But now again, we have a country that's softened on that. And you've got to wonder where it isn't just for the money lots of times. People work against this country because they have been charged by a political entity that they admired that, benefits from this capitalistic society, preaches socialism, and then, I believe, infects the minds of very, very impressionable young people who, by the way, also know their grade depends on the professor liking them. And to me, that is really conflict of interest and extremely dangerous. Kenny, did you have any comments to make? We've only got 6 minutes here, so.
I wanted to take this opportunity, if Jess is still listening, to thank her for
I tell you, it was
that
wonderful.
wonderful call. And Dawn, you surprised me. You sat there and you just listened. I can't get a conversation with you like that. The phone number is 508-830-3971, and he does not bite.
Well, this is the near the end of this, and I like to bring humor and I like to laugh. I hate to get on negative streaks, but I believe not only was it nice to have Jess call, but I think it's informative, and that's what we try to be, is informative to the people sitting there. But anyway, this again at the risk of politically correct people who have no sense of humor. None. They don't when it comes down there. You know, and that's what we see now. You know, we've got these people who they don't like the Washington football team. They don't want to be called Redskins because it's offensive. For heaven's sake. We have the Chicago Blackhawks, by the way. That's where the president was from. Why isn't he offended?
Not yet.
But anyway, so this is about rednecks, which being a former English teacher, I got the biggest kick out of this. Someone sent to me a medical term and how the redneck would interpret it. An artery, the study of paintings. Bacteria, back door to the cafeteria. Barium, what doctors do when patients die. Barium. Benign, what you be after you be ate. Caesarean section, a neighborhood in Rome. CAT scan, searching for the kitty. Cauterized, made eye contact with her. Colic, a sheepdog. Coma, a punctuation mark. Dilate, to live long. Cute. Enema, not a friend. Festa, quicker than someone else. Fibula, a small lie. Impotent, distinguished, well-known. Labor pain, getting hurt at work. Medical staff, a doctor's cane. Morbid, a higher offer. Nitrates, rates of pay for working at night. Normally more money than days. Node, I knew it. Outpatient, a person who has fainted. Pelvis, second cousin to Elvis. Post-operative, a letter carrier. Recovery room, place to do upholstery. Rectum, nearly killed him. Secretion, hiding something. Seizure, Roman emperor. Tablet, a small table. Terminal illness, getting sick at the airport. Tumor, 1 + 1 more. Urine, opposite of you're out. Well, that's bringing us up pretty near to the end, ladies and gentlemen, but I don't know if we can do much about what's going on, but it is a pretty sad case. But the last minute or two here, on my radio show, I lived in Hyannisport, was friendly with several of the Kennedys, Ted being a very dear friend of mine. And it was so kind of bittersweet. If you notice People magazine, I only see it when I go through the line at Stop and Shop. But July 13th, which was last week, they had the cover with President Kennedy and Jackie and the little Caroline. It's a beautiful picture. And these are never before seen photos. It came from Maud Shaw, who was their nanny. Now, I never knew her, but I knew a couple of the other people who took care. But inside, on page 44, is a wonderful pictures. And those of us that were around, I was in college. And I'll never forget those days, and to have lived in that neighborhood and to go by that house and have spent time in the house for a long time. It brought back how sad it is to still to look at President Kennedy and remember the horrible day in Dallas. But you try to forget that and look at how much the country was so. It was divided, yes, and we had the civil rights movement, but it was an exciting time to be 20 years old and have a young family in the White House. So God bless you. Let's hope we get more days like this today as far as weather goes, and less days like this as far as a killing of our wonderful service people down in Chattanooga or anyone else. God bless you. Thanks for watching. And Catch me on the radio on 95 WXTK, Saturdays from 11 to 1. Kenny Bukes, thanks very much for your help, and God bless the United States of America.